Welcome to Crossover the Pond, brought to you by 21 Media Productions and Sports Social. He's Drew Lasker, I'm Josh Sexton. This is another episode as we continue our NBA basketball journey, a short hezzy tween and stutter step away here in the UK. Drew, I don't know about you, my man, my sleeping pattern is so out of whack right now. I had to go to bed early last night so I could do a busy morning of work today. Caught up on the Knicks Cavs game just before, was cramming it in just before this episode, but I did stay up for the Spurs Thunder game the night before, and I mean, it was worth staying up for. It's worth saying that first and foremost, but golly, 2 overtimes at an already late game for us fans in the UK is brutal when you wake up the next day.
Yeah, ironically, we were flip-floppy. So last night I stayed up and watched that game. By the
Right.
time I went to bed, it was about 4 a.m. and it was the sun was coming up. I didn't stay up for the Spurs Thunder, but I literally 2 minutes before checking in with you, I just watched this game back, and I love the NBA. That game, watching that game, made me emotional several times. This is why we love playoff basketball. We love to see the best players in the world compete at a high level, and two incredible teams. Just it was like the Thriller in Manila. Like both teams at the end of the whistle were laying on the canvas, like stretched out.
Yeah, a penny for the thoughts of a lot of Western Conference teams who are watching that Spurs Thunder game in particular. But I wanted to start with last night's game really, so it's kind of poignant that you stayed up for that one because it's the most recent one. We'll start there. I think there's going to be a lot to recommend from Spurs Thunder, but I thought last night's game was really interesting in so many ways. I am slightly worried from a Cleveland perspective about last night's game because I'm kind of looking at this game as like a give and take game where the Cleveland Cavaliers basically gave New York about as good as I think they can give, and yet New York was able to take the game away from them. And there were so many of those little give and take battles where like New York were, giving blitzing Harden on pick and rolls, and then Harden was, a couple of times able to like saloon door the defenders who'd blitzed him, but New York were just completely able to like take, any of Harden's ball handling abilities away from him. It was one of those games where I think New York's defense is on such a high level that James Harden like can't really compete offensively in this series, and that's definitely a concern of for mine as as a James Harden fan. He's been someone I've been sticking up for. I mentioned on the last episode that I think the criticism for Donovan Mitchell at times is not loud enough considering how loud it is for James Harden. And yet you kind of see in this game, how offensively quick and how good over 3 levels Donovan Mitchell is. And you don't necessarily get out of James Harden because he doesn't have that quickness, and you need to be quick against his New York defense. Otherwise, they are just going to smother you. And so many times it felt like he got smothered in this one. So we'll start there, really, Drew. There's so many other things that I could build off from this, really. But I'm interested to know what you thought about, the Cavs offense versus the New York Knicks defense, first and foremost.
Yeah, I was watching this game live, and I thought to myself, as we continue to get deeper and deeper into the playoffs, if you can't dribble and if you are not strong with the basketball, it's like taking candy to a baby. And this is all these defensive teams. This is San Antonio. This is OKC. I saw Dylan Harper get ripped several times there in overtime. You must be strong with the basketball. And it almost feels like time and time again watching these playoff series that the point of attack or the point guard or whoever has the ball is shocked by the aggressiveness of the defense. It felt James Harden was shocked that they were so rugged, so harassing defensively on him, and he was just kind of, I don't want to say lazy. It was just like not careless, but he just wasn't strong with the basketball. And for Cleveland's offense, and you're right. It made me think of a couple things as well. Is that if you're gonna get one, this is the one you got to get. It reminded me of that game Portland had against San Antonio in the third quarter, where Portland had an opportunity at home, and Dylan Harper went on that run, and I was like, "Yep, series over." It reminded me of when Orlando was up big against Detroit, and they let Detroit back in, and I said, "Game over." This is exactly the way I felt in this game because New York had 9 days off. It was very obvious. Their offense was so out of sync, specifically their shooting. It's hard to imagine they're going to shoot that poorly again. Cleveland, they weren't fantastic, but they were hitting timely shots in the second half. They got going. And that's when you have to step your foot on the necks of the opponent and steal one, because this loss for Cleveland, I summarize it in one word. It is completely demoralizing. It is, I guarantee you, none of those guys are getting any sleep as we're speaking right now on the East Coast. They're tossing and turning because it was right there for the taking. You know, lastly, you asked about James Harden offense in the second half, and I saw your tweet the other day. Let the respect be as loud as the disrespect when Harden the other day. Well, this is why the disrespect continues to be loud, because he just didn't deliver time and time again offensively down the stretch. Too slow with the ball, too ball dominant, not moving the ball quick enough, and trying to rely on his signature one-on-one moves that worked for so many years. But now at the age of 37 or however old he is, that offense isn't sustainable. These teams are too young, they're too long, they're too quick. They can make up ground, and he just doesn't have the ability to beat anybody off the dribble, and he doesn't have the ability. The biggest key with Harden is he doesn't have the ability to create enough space to get a clean look.
Yeah, and that's where, again, I'll reference the quickness there. Obvious flaws in James Harden's game, and I'm not going to bury my head in the sand as much as I am still going to call for that level of respect for James Harden. Like, there were times this season where he single-handedly saved the Clippers in the first half of the season. He looked good for Cleveland in the second half of their regular season, especially when the trade was first made. And me and you were coming on this podcast, and I was thinking, God, this trade is an absolute masterstroke for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like, an Eastern Conference Finals is so on their horizon, and of course they've got to this moment now, but as I say, that offense needs to be on such a high level. And I think you're right to sort of highlight it is kind of carelessness, because 6 turnovers in this one, only 3 assists. There was one that he threw over the top to Mobley, and he was trying to then call for a challenge from Kenny Atkinson.
Yep.
And I don't know whether he was calling it for because it tipped off someone he thought, or because he thought he got fouled. I don't think either of those things happened. I think it was just such a careless turnover, and maybe he was a little bit embarrassed by what had happened and what he was even trying to do, because again, Evan Mobley was cut and he threw it right over the top of everyone. It ended up in row 3 of Madison Square Garden. Really genuinely confusing. Brunson going at him time and time again, and that kind of brings me nicely on to New York's offense in this one, because you mentioned there it wasn't a great shooting night from New York. It was one of those ones where I almost couldn't figure out whether this was the beauty of the Cavs scheme and how high level the Cavs defense can be, where I was like, oh, they're keeping all these other guys quiet and actually just letting Jalen Brunson beat them, which is it's a tactic that the Clippers have employed against the Dallas Mavericks with Luka Doncic in the past, where they're like, we're not going to let any of these other guys beat us. Luka's going to have to beat us on his own, basically. And I was kind of watching it being like, oh, is this what's happening here? But really, when you go to the box score after, you realize that a few guys were just not having good shooting nights. Karl-Anthony Towns, in particular, who, listen, I expect that Cat will have a tougher series in this one than he did in the last series against Toronto, and in the series before that against Atlanta, because you've got the sort of twin towers in Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen here. Again, sort of referencing that give and take. There was moments where I was really impressed with Evan Mobley in this one. By the way, none of them hide him from the moment. Evan Mobley took 16 shots in this one. James Harden took 16 shots in this one. It's my biggest criticism of Donovan Mitchell in that last episode, is that when his offense is not quite going, the shot totals plummet too much for the guy who's meant to be the number one option on this team. Evan Mobley brought it. I'm happy to sign that apology form, but then again, you kind of see it at times where Evan Mobley is maybe just not quite strong enough. There was the sort of strange, maybe it wasn't strange, maybe it was a good tactic, because it did help the Cavaliers build this 22-point lead, by the way, they had with 7 minutes and 52 seconds left. If you're up by 22 points with 7 minutes and 52 seconds left, you have to find a way to close out this game. But they were hacking Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson only hit 2 of his 8 free throws that he took. I was screaming at my laptop, being like, take that man out of the game. This is not the game for this man. They're going to find a way to exploit this over and over again. And it was almost overkill from New York's point of view, really. And listen, it paid dividends in the end. New York managed to pull this one out of the fire. The guy I really want to shout out on New York, because as I say, Jalen Brunson stepped up to the task, did what he needed to do. Not great from 3-point range, as we've said with most of the guys, besides maybe Mikal Bridges, who was struggling at the start of the series. But there was one guy off the bench who really brought it. And when I was looking at Mitchell Robinson lineup and being like, they don't need this guy to be on the floor right now. They could go small here and have ways they could kill Cleveland offense. And who was I thinking in my head? I was like, Miles McBride's not had a great game. Jordan Clark's not had a great game.
Shamet.
Landry Shamet. Landry Shamet is the one who completely turned this around for the Knicks in the fourth quarter. Got a charge on Evan Mobley at one point, hit a three down the other end, hit another three in the fourth quarter, and then hit a three in overtime. And, these are the moments, Drew, where we talk about X factors in playoff series. We talk about guys coming off benches to have big moments. Landry Shamet may have just had his one, or maybe he's going to have more if they do go with that small lineup I referenced throughout this series. He could have these moments again because, he really stepped up to the plate last night.
Yeah, great shout. And, just to finish your point off with Shaman is that the basketball guys was on his side. That shot from the corner looked like it was way off, and all of a sudden it looked like a golf shot when they hit it from 160 yards and it overruns the hole and then it spins back inside. That's what that shot looked like from Shaman, and then on the other end for Sam Merrill for that shot to go in and out. So Shaman's shot went out and in, Merrill's went in and out. And
I was thinking, Drew, like we've had, Mike Breen bangs, we've had Mike Breen double bangs. It's the first time I ever heard a half bang from Mike Breen. Did you hear he started it? He started the bang and went, oh, it's out.
Yeah, it looked like it was money, and he was shooting well in the second half. Also, you bring up a great point about Cat. I think Cat is going to struggle this series because if you look at all of his opponents before here, he hasn't had this much size on him. And you have Evan Mobley looming in the background because he's guarding Josh Hart, but he's not guarding him. He's just kind of like an NFL safety in the background. They're allowing Josh Hart to beat them. And so Karl Anthony Towns, he has to not only go through one big body, but then if he beats Allen off the dribble, then he's coming to another footer. So, ultimately New York ran out of ideas, and they had to go back to what's basically got them here. The criticism all along about you can't win with the 6-foot guard. You can't win with Brunson dribbling the ball out the air. And actually watching it live, I was complaining on the TV screen like, no, in New York, you can't operate this way. It's not sustainable. But, man, the shots that Brunson was making off the window, the angles, the soft touch, those are incredibly difficult shots. So the shot making that he displayed in the fourth quarter was absolutely all world. And I even tweeted this at 3 o'clock in the morning. He was at a hibachi grill. He put James Harden in a sushi roll and put him on top and absolutely fried him. You have to think that James Harden, former MVP of this league, was embarrassed. I mean, I was disappointed in Cleveland's defense of just the lack of whatever happened to. I understand that we've moved to versatile players, switchability, but whatever happened to just quickly fighting underneath the screen or fighting over the top? Like, these switches are just way too easy, especially when you're being attacked. I can understand 1 or 2 possessions, but possession after possession after possession, they just come with a light ball screen action, get James Harden in it, and Brunson just went in attack mode. Harden at first, he tried to move his feet, but then as he realized it was nothing he could do, he made matters worse by gambling. He tried to reach early, and that just made things a lot more easy. And I believe that affected his offense as well down the stretch because although James Harden did make a tough shot in regulation, that little spin around midi, but I've been in that situation before. Like, if you're getting cooked defensively, it robs you of your swagger. It robs you of your confidence on the offensive end, and that's what we saw with James Harden last night.
Yeah, and I do expect the Harden will recover and he'll have some good games in this series. He's not the kind of guy that will be played out of a playoff series. Excuse me. A couple of guys in the rotation who I was looking at and thinking like I'm not sure you're ready for this moment. Keon Ellis in this one, basically a non-factor when he came into the game. Jose Alvarado, I just don't think has enough offensively. Like he's good as like an energy guy who kind of like inspires a team onwards when he's on the floor. But like Cleveland were just able to like leave him to do whatever he wanted to do, and he was still even making mistakes in doing that. So those were two guys who I was like, I'm not sure they're ready for this moment. It'll be so interesting to see what these two teams do going forward in terms of adjustments, really, Drew, because I do expect that the Knicks will continue to shoot better. A guy like OG Anunoby was someone that I was looking at in this one and being like, I expect way more from you as the series goes on. I expect that Mitchell Robinson will probably see less minutes in moments if the Cavs are going to keep that sort of hacker shack kind of play up in this one. I don't necessarily think you need Mitchell Robinson. I was listening to the Zach Lowe show just before I came on as well when I was like getting ready for the podcast. And he was saying like, oh, Mitchell Robinson's been a guy who's been able to kill Cleveland on the glass, so we expect him to be an X factor in this series. I honestly don't think New York need him to be. I think New York has enough guys who can rebound the basketball. Karl-Anthony Towns can rebound the basketball. Again, shows it in this one with 13 boards. Josh Hart with 7 boards. I don't think the Knicks are going to need Mitchell Robinson this series, and that's where I say I feel like there's some massive missed opportunity for Cleveland. If Cleveland would have stolen game one when New York was rusty and when New York looked like they didn't have it necessarily going, and to be 22 points up again with 8 minutes left, just crazy to not really see that game out. I went from almost being like, oh, this could be like a 7-game series, this one, to, oh, like, I expect New York to do this in maybe a maximum of 6. You could honestly convince me 5 right now. And again, it's like, it's fine margins, but the playoffs are fine margins, and we could have 5 close games and New York comes away with 4 of them. Like, that's, I'm now genuinely a bit worried for Cleveland in this series, even though I expect there'll be things in Cleveland's game that raise as much as they do in New York's.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I see this being over in 5 now. Like this game changed everything with this series. Cleveland wins this game, it's going a minimum of 6, either way. But now I wouldn't be shocked if there's a sweep, but it's definitely not going more than 5 because it's just going to be too difficult for Cleveland to pick themselves up, specifically when they're coming off back-to-back game 7s. And then you look at these rosters and you look at the box score. And again, I've been saying this all season long. When you look at New York, you look at OKC, you look at Spurs, what do they all have in common? Just a plethora of depth. I mean, you still got Sohan on there that you could bring in for energy, defensive purposes. You got Diarra, who's a fantastic shooter. You got Kolek, who can also come in and mix it up offensively as well. So they got weapons, ammo sitting on the bench. When I look at Cleveland's bench, the only player that didn't play that I could see having an impact is Tyson. I'm shocked he didn't play. Was he injured? I'm shocked. I was
Coach's
waiting.
Decision, it says, yeah.
I'm shocked. Down the stretch, I kept thinking I would sub Tyson in for Harden, especially because you got a big lead. You didn't really need offense; you needed defense, right? And at least you were able to throw a bigger body out there. And Tyson is a reliable shooter. I don't know what he's shooting now, but there was once upon a time during the season he was shooting 40%. Probably not that high now, but I was shocked to see him not have him to have a DNP. But there are no other bench options for Cleveland, and that's what concerns me. The one silver lining though is Schroeder. It's hard to believe he will play that poorly. He was 1 for 9. He missed so many bunnies around the rim. He had wide open jumpers that he missed as well. So I believe he was the key also. Like if he was on his form, Cleveland kind of run away with that game easily. But now it's tough. But I say all of that to say that the thing that we've learned about these playoffs is you just can't overreact and you can't panic, specifically when it comes to Cleveland. Cleveland, all playoffs, I looked at them and said, it's over. Like I said that at the beginning of the Detroit series, even looking at them against Toronto when they went to Toronto on the road. And I'm like, oh, this team's cooked now. They can't handle physicality. They can't handle pressure, but they are resilient. They continue to rise up out of the ashes and somehow able to, stay within the fight. So, game 2, Josh, is going to tell us a lot about where this series is going to go, in my opinion. Because again, I see a scenario of blowouts either way. If Cleveland won, game 2 would have been a blowout from the Knicks' perspective. You just know how these teams are. We stole one, we're good. But now, like, I just see that because these games are so quick, in succession. There's a 1 day gap that Cleveland doesn't have enough time to kind of just digest what happened. Like it's almost like a fighter getting knocked down and getting back up at the 9 count, but they're so dazed that they don't know what's happening, and then they get knocked out with the second attempt. I can see this happening with Cleveland.
Yeah, definitely a concern for Cleveland. I agree with the Tyson shout, by the way. Like, it feels like a way that you can fight fire with fire in the sense that New York have got all these big wings. Like, Jalen Tyson is in that same prototype, good shooter. It just feels like a no-brainer to me that you bring him in for Keon Ellis into that 8-man rotation, 9-man rotation, I should say, in the next game. And then, yeah, if you New York, I mean, even if you just took Jose Alvarado out the rotation, the guys that you have there, I'm sure Miles McBride will have a better game next time round too. Like, yeah, New York has almost too many weapons, I'd say. I was just looking at the schedule then, Drew, and again, me and you doing on-air admin here, but I imagine we'll come around to sort of record again, maybe at the game 4 mark. I don't know about you. I could see this one being 3-1 to New York by the time we come back if it's at the game 4 mark.
Yeah, I'm right there. 3-1, most definitely. I'm not shocked if it's over, but you got to think that Cleveland, they have a tough hill to climb. Final thing on this series, what really kept me up, because right before this game came on, like I kind of dozed off, and I looked at the clock and I was like, oh shoot, it's like 1:10. But I went and watched the game from the beginning, and that New York crowd kept me up for 3 hours. That place, it just the energy in the building, even when New York was struggling, like you could tell, like it feels like they never sit down, and they were just ready. They were just ready to explode. And once um, Brunson gave them a reason to really let out that emotion, yeah, I was like, I'm shocked that I actually went to sleep as quick as I did after this one.
Yeah, proper playoff atmosphere always at Madison Square Garden. There was a point where it felt like Cleveland had let the air out of the balloon in Madison Square Garden again, that 22-point lead, but didn't capitalize in that moment. But speaking of proper playoff atmospheres, letting the air out of the balloon, crowds getting silenced in these conference finals, we'll flip over to the OKC Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs. And I don't know if there's anywhere else we can start, Drew. It'd be remiss if we started anywhere else than Victor Wembanyama. That 3-pointer from the logo to silence the crowd. It might be the quietest I've ever heard a group of like tens of thousands of people go in unison. Just crazy, like the level that he's able to perform at. There's so much technically about Victor Wembanyama that I am like constantly bowled over by. But the thing I appreciate the most about him, arguably, is how much like he's willing to rise to the moment, how much he's willing to like put his physicality on display. Like he's a 7'5" guy who's never moved like any other 7'5" guy we've seen in history, really, because of the freedom of movement. But even within that freedom of movement, you're like, oh well, he moves a bit like a guard. He kind of doesn't move like a guard because how much he uses physicality as well. There was one point in this where Keldon Johnson was free on the 3-point line. Keldon Johnson, who hit 3 of 6 threes in this, by the way, and is a good 3-point shooter, 6th man of the year, wide open on the 3-point line. When Banyam was being double teamed inside by Chet and by one of the OKC guards or wings, and rather than pass it out to Keldon Johnson, he just basically went straight through Chet's chest and managed to hit a layup. And I was like, this is a guy who like is so ready for this moment, so ready to play this OKC team. It means that OKC go to 1-5 against San Antonio in the season series, if you're including this postseason game. I don't know how, and I'm sure they will, by the way. I'm sure this is going to be a series that goes to 7. I hope it goes to 7 because I feel like we as NBA fans deserve this series to go to 7. But I don't know how you have any answers for what Victor Wembanyama is able to do, because this man is a freak of nature.
I was telling my boy Corey, who I haven't had an NBA jersey in years. I think the last NBA jersey I bought was a LeBron James All-Star jersey in like 2007, when they had those cool blue jerseys with the stars on them. I am seriously considering buying me a Fiesta Wembyamba jersey. That's how much I'm becoming a fan. To watch his growth throughout this playoffs has been incredible. From going to, okay, because you could tell he's a deep thinker, to trying to mentally maneuver through it like a philosopher, to all of a sudden a light bulb went off in his head, and he was like, wait, I'm the best player in the world. And why do I need to wait to win a championship? And since then, he's been on a mission. I mean, he has been imposing his will. You talk about that logo three, Josh. That was only his second three of the game. That's what makes it so impressive. He's cut back from the threes. He's been dominating the paint. 14 for 25, 41 points, 24 rebounds, and only 3 blocks. But that stat is so misleading because he is forcing OKC to make business decisions every time they're in the paint. They having to reassess the situation and dribbling in and dribbling back out. But last episode we talked about the plus minus, and again how sometimes you got to take it with a grain of salt. But this goes and proves as well. First of all, before this game, he was already a plus 14 in the playoffs. In the last series against Minnesota, he played 48 minutes and 42 seconds, right? An NBA game is 48 minutes. This game went into double overtime. Who gets those minutes when he's on the bench? Luke Cornett. Luke Cornett got the remaining 9 minutes and 28 seconds, and this is really telling. Victor was a plus 16 in those 48 minutes in a double overtime game in which the Spurs won by, what did they win by? They won by 7 points. His backup was a -9. So that just goes to show the impact that Victor had in this game. The only other person in double figures, plus minus, Dylan Harper. You got Vassell at 3, Champagne at 8. But, man, just shout out to both teams. Like, I could watch these two teams go at it back and forth forever. I could watch a 21-game series of both of these teams because these are the only two teams in the NBA in which when they look in the mirror, they look across, they see their opponent, they see a reflection of themselves. They are so similar. Both teams are very young, right? Victor's not even on a max deal yet. He's not even on his second contract. They both have so much depth, so much options on the bench, and they also had length as well. One thing I will say, Josh, is that the one thing that I did notice, and this is what's very encouraging for the Spurs, because I've seen Dylan Harper get a lot of plaudits on social media before I watched this game, but in overtime and double overtime, he wasn't great. He made a lot of mistakes, kind of rushing, and you could tell that him and Castle, they aren't real surgical point guards. They're this new age point guard, and down the stretch of the playoffs, you need a guy who can drive the ship, and that's where they miss Fox. And so as much criticism as Fox has gotten his playoffs, because he's been very inconsistent, their offense is going to run a lot better, a lot smoother down the stretch when Fox is in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to come back on that point of all those hallmarks of what you've said have been like winning teams this season with the youth, the length, the depth, all those kind of things. I heard an anecdote from Bryson Graham, who's the new lead executive of the Chicago Bulls, was sort of employed in that whole turnaround of the Chicago Bulls organization recently, and he referred to him wanting the Chicago Bulls to play with slap, and I was like, what the hell is SLAP? So I went away and looked into it. It's an acronym standing for speed, length, athleticism, and physicality. And as you say, Drew, I don't know about anyone else watching this. These two teams were slapping the shit out of each other. that speed, that length, that athleticism, that physicality was all over this court. I do want to shout out Dylan Harper because yes, like, there were moments in the overtime where I think, to be honest, I think maybe the speed of the game had just caught up, and there's so much physicality in this game. I've heard the officials even getting some credit, which is so like rare to come away from an NBA game and hear the officials getting credit. But I felt the same. Like I came away and I was like, there was so many contact dunks that weren't necessarily just like straight up called an and one. the foul baiting basically like didn't exist in this game because no one was able to bait a foul because the physicality was on like such a high level. And for me, like Dylan Harper was almost the spiritual leader of this game in that, where like there was one point where it was like a 1-on-4 fast break and he like came away with a wide open layup and I was like, how have you managed to make that happen? This kid is 20 years old and completely like showed up for this moment. Yes, as the game went on, maybe like faded a little bit. I kind of expect that from a 20-year-old who's, you know, for the most part been a bench player because De'Aaron Fox has been the starter alongside Stephon Castle in this one. But the physicality that the San Antonio Spurs brought in this one, I was just so impressed with. And again, it kind of left me scratching my head about like, if you are OKC, what do you do in this one? Because I look on the other side and like, I would say Chet Holmgren brought the physicality, but only came away with 8 points in this one. When you talk about the you know, the only the 3 blocks that Wembanyama had, I think that's like physical blocks. There's like so many mental blocks that he has where you look at Chet Holmgren's 2 of 7 from the field. You look at Shea's 7 of 23 from the field when Shea is like an uber efficient guy usually. And I'm not even talking about threes here. I'm specifically talking about like twos and what you're able to do inside the paint. Victor just like stops all of that completely. Played Isaiah Hartenstein off the floor. Like Isaiah Hartenstein get 12 minutes in this one. And for me, Isaiah Hartenstein is maybe like a top 10 center in the NBA. He might even be a top 5 center in the NBA because of, you know, the playmaking and other sort of unicorn things he's able to do as a center. Couldn't even play in this playoff game because of Victor Wembanyama. And like, I don't want this to become a Victor Wembanyama point again, even though I could just constantly keep going back to him, because I kind of want to shout out the whole Spurs cast really in this one. Like Devin Vassell, the sort of level that I've seen from him throughout these playoffs. I'm sure it was Devin Vassell, wasn't it, who hit the no dip 3 in the last series against Minnesota. One of the craziest shots I've ever seen, by the way. I've learned that Julian Champagny is Julian Champagny now, and previously like they were 2 twins. I got confused all the time, like which one was Justin, which one was Julian. But sort of like how Marcus Morris completely separated himself from Markieff Morris by like high level offense. I'm starting to do that with Julian now. Like I know who Julian is because high level offense doesn't necessarily get done in terms of efficiency in this one, but hits big threes, gets 9 rebounds in this one, rises to the physicality of the game despite not necessarily being a plus defender. I've already shouted out Dylan Harper. Stephon Castle again, maybe not an uber efficient game, but the physicality is on like another level from him, and 11 assists in this one. Yes, 11 turnovers, but I feel like he was one of those players who, if Dylan Harper maybe faded as the game went later on, I feel like Stephon Castle raised his level of physicality as the game went on here. And then, you know, maybe the only efficient guy on the team besides Victor was Keldon Johnson coming off the bench, and you know, even Carter Bryant there with a couple of shots too. Just so much to recommend from the San Antonio Spurs team. And I started this point by talking about that slap, and almost every guy I've gone through there, you know, Luke Cornett and Harrison Barnes, I'll be interested to see what happens with them throughout this series, because I feel like when Luke Cornett was on the floor was when OKC were able to get their best moments. I'm not sure how much Luke Cornett can really touch the floor in this series, and quite similar with Harrison Barnes really. But the guys who meet those slap requirements absolutely stood up to this task for San Antonio.
Yeah, OKC was forced alongside Minnesota as well. You're forced to adjust your sub pattern because what Wemby provides defensively. So if you think about the Minnesota series, because of Rudy Gobert's lack of offensive efficiency outside of 5 feet, Victor could roam. So then that's why they had to, you know, Minnesota was better when they sat him down. You're going to see the same thing here with OKC because Hartenstein is more of a drop-off guy within the paint. Victor is able to roam. So the one guy you talk about slap, I'm disappointed you didn't mention is Caruso, because Caruso was matched up on Wembanyama a lot, providing that physicality, and that takes a lot out of you. That's a tough matchup. But then to come on the other side as well and go 11 for 19, 8 for 14 from downtown, 31 points, like he shined offensively. And again, a lot of that had to do because they were allowing him to beat San Antonio, just as Cleveland is allowing Josh Hart to beat them as well. So the tactically is going to be interesting to see what the adjustments are for both sides, because there are adjustments to come for both sides. As you mentioned, Luke Cornett, I think that that San Antonio's get smaller. Maybe they go with Carter Bryant like they did in the last series and move him to the 5 because of his versatility defensively. But yeah, this is just going to be fascinating. This deserves 7 games. I hope we get 7 games. But I mean, as a Houstonian and a supporter of the Houston Rockets, I would probably get kicked out of the city if they heard me say this. But I have just really grown to become a San Antonio Spurs fan. I mean, I love everything that they represent, what they're about. And a lot of that has to do with the mentality of Victor. Like, he wants to be him. He wants to be physical like that. Like, again, you would think, remember the elbow that he gave, who was it that he gave in the last series that got him knocked out the game?
Oh yeah, I slipped my mind now as well.
Yeah, slipped my mind. But
Yeah.
my point is that isn't deterring him away from being physical. They had to go review that play as well because he kind of spearheaded Caruso, so he's not afraid of mixing it up. He's not trying to be the nice guy that he is portrayed to be. He is trying to take your head off. He is trying to climb at the top of the mountain, and he doesn't care who legs he pulls down as he's trying to climb up. And I love that he has that old school mentality that he's bringing back, and he's forcing all of these young guys that, hey, you better step up your game. Like, it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to play hard in the All-Star game. It's okay to care. And so that's what I love what he's bringing back to the NBA.
Yeah, sorry, it was Naz Reid.
Wembanyama.
Yeah, I was sort of confusing a little bit in my head because Jaden McDaniels hits Wemby first, doesn't he? And then Wemby kind of like retaliates on the wrong guy, basically. So I couldn't remember which way around it was. But yeah, that Naz Reid play, like you say, the physicality, again, it's hard because it feels like every point you kind of end up taking back to Victor Wembanyama. I was going to come on to OKC specifically and talk about a guy like Caruso because I love these kind of games where a team goes like, oh yeah, we're just going to let you have that. And he goes, oh okay, are you? Well, like, I'm just going to torch you for 31 then. And I know, obviously, San Antonio come out with the game after double overtime. As you say, Drew, I feel like I could watch 21 of these games. I feel like we're maybe going to have to, because if every one of these 7 games that we predict we're going to get goes to double overtime, maybe I'll just never sleep again. Maybe that's the way this is going to go, and I'll be watching Alex Caruso just drain threes throughout this whole series. But I'll be interested to see what other OKC guys arrive to the party, like whether OKC can find a way to make Isaiah Hartenstein useful in this series, because he's been so important to them, throughout the whole regular season. He's important to their level of physicality, and that's the thing. Like, I think sometimes, and I think the San Antonio Spurs are a really likable team, by the way. I think sometimes people overdo how unlikable OKC are. Like, I think they were a really likable team. They started winning. Usually when teams start winning, like it was the same with the Heatles back in the day. When a team starts winning and leans a little bit into their villain arc, they become a little bit more unlikable because they're almost trying to be. But I think the level of physicality that OKC usually operate with too, and the fact that listen, like, I'm not going to sit here and say they don't get a kind of whistle. I think they do get a kind of whistle, but I think they're almost advantaged by the fact that they are just more physical in a lot of ways. Yes, some of that leads to foul baity things, and I think that is a skill. I've said that over and over again this season with a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in particular, that he's got the level of physicality, the quickness, but also like the sort of cuteness almost, to come away from those moments and be like, I'm going to be the one who puts my body in here, but I'm going to make it look like the guys fouled me. And I think there's so many players on this team. Chet Holmgren is really good at it. Jalen Williams is really good at it. And those guys are going to have to arrive in terms of that physicality in this series. And when I say arrive, like, I still think they did that at a high level, but they're going to have to find like some deep dug reserves from within them to like raise that another level. And it's where, like, I'm so interested looking at the box score and the rotation that Mark Daigneault played in this one, because it felt like he tried so many things, and I expect that he's going to get some things right as the series goes on. He plays it looks like about 12 guys in this one in the end. He's going to get some things right as the series goes on, especially if he tinkers. Like, I expect that there'll be something he plugs in that just like sparks a fire in a certain game. I'll be interested to see how many sort of smaller lineups he tries to do in this one that are just like all shooting, to just see if he can inspire something that comes outside the paint, like Isaiah Joe getting 16 seconds in this one before he just goes like, nah. I think Isaiah Joe may well get minutes in this one because his shooting is on a top level. You saw it from Cason Wallace in this one. You even saw it from Jared McCain when he came into the game, that if you have shooters that the Spurs have to honor, then you're going to be able to get some things going inside too. But I think there's adjustments that OKC can make in this one. I expect that they will make them, and that it will come good. I'm just praying that we get as much of this series as possible, Drew, because really this to me is like the honorary NBA Finals. Like this might be the most coveted conference finals trophy of all time. Like previously I'm a bit like, should you really go conference finals trophy? I don't know. Like give this team who wins this conference finals trophy. In fact, make it the NBA Finals trophy. Swap the trophies round and give whoever wins the finals the conference finals trophy instead.
Yeah, the best thing about this series, well, hopefully this series, if it's any reflection of Game One, is that the refs are making both of these teams play basketball, hoop. So there's no complaining about flopping, free throws, all of that. Like it had game flow. Just oh man, like I'm just really looking forward to this series unfolding. I unfortunately can't stay up late tonight because I'm doing the prime game two in New York, Cleveland. But I'm looking. One thing I can say for certain is that historically, NBA teams when they steal that first game on the road, they have they take their foot off the gas and they're like, "Yeah, we got it done, job's done," and then they get blowed out in game two. Victor is not letting that happen, and so you're going to get San Antonio's best punch in game two. And one other thing about Harper as well that I criticized him in the overtime period. However, one thing that I didn't mention to piggyback off your point is that you need young and dumb players. And that's how he's playing. You mentioned that 104 situation. A smart, high IQ level player isn't going to attack that, right? They're going to probably pull it out, get into their set. But that's why you need young, and I always say young and dumb because you are young and dumb. You don't know what you don't know yet because you're inexperienced, but you need that. You need those risk takers because those risk takers can provide you with some unlikely rewards, some easy baskets, some transition points that you need in a game like this because it's hard to execute. Like these teams are physical; they're taking away option one, option two, and you have to fight for everything. But the last thing that stood out to me, my last point is a reflection of that dope Slam T-shirt you have with the great Allen Iverson on there. I actually recorded that last play that OKC drew up to take it into double overtime when they ran an Iverson cut over to Shea. Usually with an Iverson cut, the guy that's coming off the two screens off the elbow is the guy that's in the action. However, they had Shea on the weak side, and it was disguised for him to come back. And usually when you run an Iverson cut, the weak side guy on the far end cuts through to the opposite side. They left Chet in that corner there. So when Shea comes back off of it, he has ISO on the left side. Just a beautiful, beautiful draw play up to. So salute to the guy Iverson on your tee.
Absolutely, yeah. And Victor had to honor Chet in the corner again. This is what I say about having to honor the shooters that OKC have. Maybe that is the way home. Is that they maybe Isaiah Hartenstein does start these games, continue to start these games, but OKC looks to have some more all shooting lineups. So it'd just be so fascinating to see what these teams do next. Who throws the next punch. I expect that OKC come out and rally for this next game. Listen, I think every single one of these games is going to be really close. I actually think this might be the one that's sort of like the least close just because of how much the Spurs blew it up in the second overtime period. But I think there's going to be, so many great things that come from this series. And like you say, Drew, for you as a basketball coach, like this, if I could say to anybody, like I'm sort of trying to get as many people in the UK into basketball and try not to have it like too high a bar to enter, because I think that's the trouble with American sports sometimes is they're so technical and they're so tactical and there's all these statistics and like all the things that Americans like love about American sports. I think sometimes you almost have to like really study them to get into them. I would say to anyone, just like go and watch this basketball game because yes, if you dig into it a little bit deeper, and like I love that basically when I read this box score, I just find more things. Like when you were shouting out Dylan Harper, then I like read across and I was like, oh, we had 7 steals. I didn't even realize because of just the eye test that Dylan Harper had 7 steals. It's one of those really fun ones where the eye test is going to tell you so much. It's going to make you fall in love with this basketball game. You're going to read the box score and more things are going to jump out to you, and it's going to make you fall more deeply in love with it. And again, me and Drew have said this over and over again, that when a lot of the fake basketball and a lot of the bad narratives were happening throughout this NBA series and things off the court were constantly distracting us because so many things happened off the court during this NBA regular season. These moments now in the conference finals is why we all follow this sport. It comes back to that Mark Jackson thing. Like if you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball for me, because this series has so much to recommend it. I recommend that anybody out there who's a basketball casual or whatever goes and watches this game in particular, but continues to keep an eye on this series, because there is going to be so much to say for it, and we're going to keep saying it. We're going to be here on Crossover the Pond to keep talking through all this, to keep analysing what the Spurs do next, what the OKC Thunder do next, what Cleveland and New York do next in their series as well. And we'll be back next week to talk through more of that. But the last thing for me to say before we head out is for Drew to lead us out.
Yeah, man, just a great close. I think it just makes sense that you keep your deep eye on San Antonio, OKC, and I'll keep my deep eye on Cleveland and New York. That's how it feels like it's going to break itself down, because it's not sustainable to stay up late every single night. So I'm definitely going to bed tonight. But yeah, say if it's too late for you guys, you just make sure you subscribe, like, tune in to the episode. We will give you all the nitty gritty, the details of these matchups. But we do recommend you go and watch it back if you want to learn more about the game. This is how you learn how basketball is played properly at a very high level. So we will tap back in before this season's ends. And who knows? Will OKC be able to rally back? Will the Cavaliers be able to still be alive? We shall see, and we will bring you all the heat here on Crossover the Pond. We'll catch you guys next time.